Today I have something really important that I want to talk about. I want to talk about credit scores, income, and criminal histories. We're going to walk through each one of those factors: income, credit history, and criminal records. And we're going to talk through each one of them and see that they're not the problem, they're the symptom of an even bigger problem. So whether you're the person that has one of those in your past, or you're the landlord that's considering accepting someone who has one of those things in their past, we're going to talk through what the bigger problem is and why those are just symptoms. Especially a new landlord, whenever you have something empty, like right here behind me, we're sitting with brand new construction that's sitting empty. They're looking for tenants. Sometimes you'll think that, hey, if I could just get a tenant in that place, this person's good enough. Their income's just a little below my standard. Their credit score's just a little bit below my standard. Or they just have this little criminal history that they're a good person. I'm just gonna get them in this house. It's gonna solve my vacancy. I'm gonna help them out. Or maybe you're on the other end of the spectrum. You're the person with one of those deficiencies in your record, and you think, man, I just have this little thing. How come I'm getting screwed over? Well, both of those are the wrong attitude, and we're gonna walk through each one of those factors: income, credit history, and criminal records. Whether you're new to real estate investing, you've been doing it for a little bit, or you're still thinking about getting started, you need to set goals for what you want to achieve. Check out my course down below, the 4 Pillars of Real Estate Investing, to understand what it is what questions you should be asking yourself as you get further along in your real estate journey. In it, I talk through some of the positives and negatives about various forms of buy and hold real estate investing and the various markets you can be choosing to develop your portfolio in. So check that out and make sure that you are exactly where you want to be to reach your goals. As a landlord, you're already very familiar with your responsibility to not discriminate against potential tenants. And so you're probably already screening for income, credit scores, and some kind of background. As a landlord, it's also important for you to know that you're doing these screenings to protect yourself and also to protect your tenants. Let's go through each one of these. First is income. This is probably the most obvious. If someone's income doesn't reach the required multiple of rent, obviously by accepting them as a tenant, you're going to be putting them in a position where they're going to be struggling in the future. That's not fair for them as a tenant, not fair for you as a landlord, and so it's very obvious to avoid this hassle. However, the bigger thing is why income's a problem. Income isn't just that job or that money to pay the rent. Income is the way that society communicates value. So if you are the person who you say, well, my income just isn't quite high enough to support that rent, you really need to be introspective and think, how am I failing to communicate value, and why is it so difficult for me to produce the income that I need to get this apartment, to get this house, to get this place? So really you need to look inside and see, like, hey, what is it that I need to be doing to communicate more value to make this happen? As a landlord, a lot of times it's easy to say, well, look, this person has a great income. It's very easy for me to accept them. Or, a very short income or very short work history. Well, if that person hasn't proven themselves, that's why I screen for a 3-year work history. If that person hasn't proven themselves over time, maybe that income isn't really reflective of their value, and somehow they've just recently talked themselves into a good job. So income is really the outward sign of the value, the perceived value that person has in the marketplace. So by screening for income, especially income over a period of time, you're able to very quickly determine the likelihood that person as a tenant is going to be able to continue producing value and continue being able to pay the rent in the future. The one that is probably the most controversial to tenants is credit score. This is the one where I get excuses all the time. But my credit score, but this one thing happened, but this one problem. Credit score isn't just a single point in time snapshot. Credit score takes a cumulative evaluation of that person's ability to handle money over time. And it does factor recency or severity of delinquencies in the calculation. So the biggest thing is, if you are the person with the bad credit score, it's not just handling the money, but it's also the way you handle your time and your ability to foresee things. People with bad credit scores, things have snuck up on them. They weren't proactive. People will have bad credit due to delinquent medical bills, due to overextended credit cards, due to failure to pay car payments. All of these are really failures in your ability to plan for the future. What financial planning didn't occur for you to get over your limit on your credit cards? What financial planning didn't occur for you to purchase a car that you couldn't make payments on in the future? What life planning didn't occur that you didn't have medical insurance prior to that major medical emergency? So you can see the credit score is a symptom. The real problem is a failure to plan ahead of time, and the bad credit score is the symptom of that problem. You as a landlord are allowed to use credit making a determination on tenants, and that's going to help you pick tenants that are going to be able to plan better for the future and not take as much of your time helping to parent them and life coach them down the road. And you as a tenant or as an individual, if you just say, well, I just had a bad credit score, I just had this one thing happen. No, that's an outward symptom of a failure to plan over time that you're now asking other people to take on that problem for you. Just like it's important to evaluate tenants before they rent your house, it's important to evaluate what you want to get out of real estate investing. Take the quick course down below and determine how you should be setting goals for your real estate investing business to get exactly what you want out of it. Criminal history is my favorite screening activity. And the reason being isn't because of jail or because of crimes or because of bad things people have done. Criminal history really, I think at its core, tells you the kind of people that that person associates with. Nobody gets a DUI or nobody robs a liquor store because they just felt like it that day. It's a key indicator of the influences that person has in their life. And if you have those kind of influences in somebody's life, the biggest thing as a landlord is clearly at some point they could end up going to jail, not being able to pay rent, and now you have a default with a non-payment that you have to do a material eviction, get their stuff out of the house, find a new tenant, and all that kind of stuff. But additionally, those are the kind of people that they're going to be bringing into your property on a regular basis, are the same kind of people that help them make the decision to get that DUI, to rob that store, to, destroy that house, to not make payments on their rent, to get evicted in the past. Whatever that criminal history is, those are the kind of people that person keeps in their life, and those are the kind of people that are helping them make decisions. So when you're doing criminal screenings, really, I think the value as a landlord isn't even necessarily the crime. It's filtering out people that can't make good choices in their social circles. And I think that's the biggest value that you get as a landlord. They say that you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with, including yourself. And so if you are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with, including yourself, then I think it goes to show that your success or your failures are going to be symptomatic of the kind of influences you get from the 5 people that you spend the most time with. If the 5 people you spend the most time with are encouraging you to make bad choices, obviously that's going to pay negative dividends in criminal histories, overextension with bad credit scores, or even inability to keep solid jobs or continue on upward paths at work. Whereas on the flip side, if the 5 people that you're spending the most time with are positive people, you're going to continue striving at work, getting those promotions, creating value in the marketplace. Your credit score is going to blossom as you make good financial decisions, you plan for the future, you save and invest. And also your criminal history is going to be non-existent. On the flip side, all your social records are going to be positive social records. Instead of worrying about criminal records, you're going to be worrying about networking opportunities and growing in the marketplace, because those are the things that your social sphere is going to push you towards. So those are my thoughts on the biggest 3 things that you screen for as a landlord. Screening for criminal activity, screening for credit history, screening for income as a relation to rent. As you're screening for those things, those are just outward symptoms. Those are things that you as a landlord are allowed to screen for. You're allowed to evaluate people against a set standard prior to accepting them as tenants. And then as you take those things, you take those symptoms, you don't have to explain to people the bad choices they're making with their lives. You don't have to coach them, give them subjective evaluation, be a life coach, because helping them with their life could be considered discriminatory. But if you're just comparing them against the objective standard, all you're doing is exactly that. You're comparing them against the objective standard and letting them know if they made the cut or not. I always like to give people insight. If they ask for coaching, they ask for ways they can improve themselves, I'm more than willing to help them out. At the same time, whenever people show repeatedly that they're not willing to improve themselves, I'm more than happy to go ahead and cut them out of my life. But the big thing is to learn with those 3 standards as a landlord or as a tenant, that those are just symptoms of the bigger problems or the bigger successes that are happening within, whether those things are positive or negative. My advice to young landlords is a lot of times you want to go ahead and just overlook some small thing. You want to see the good side of people. You want to provide them opportunities. And while I think that's important, it's also important to recognize that those standards exist for a reason, because the likelihood of that person changing is very low. So even if your units are empty like this, and you really want to put somebody in to your empty unit, and so you're very tempted to lower your standards, I suggest that you make every effort to put a tenant in who meets your standards prior to relaxing those. Not gonna lie, sometimes we do relax standards when we've gone for a certain period of time without being able to get a qualified tenant. We'll then relax those standards, especially on some more distressed properties, to get a tenant in. But I recognize that when we do relax those standards because we haven't found a qualified tenant, I'm incurring risks. Not just income, credit, or criminal risks, but the fact that by relaxing on those risks, I am now opening myself up to people whose time may not be that valuable, to people who have proven that they can't plan their life well, and to people who have proven that they don't surround themselves with good people. And so those wild cards have shown themselves in observable metrics, and they're probably going to show themselves negatively in some way in my house. And so I have to recognize that if I do relax those standards, that's what I'm opening myself up to as a landlord. So that's my advice to some of you young landlords out there who are looking to just give somebody a break or allow them an opportunity to grow. That's commendable, that's good, but realize that those risks are going to be unknown quantities for you. You don't know exactly how that's going to play out, and so you are incurring a risk when you do that. So you need to calculate that before you decide to open yourself up to that. I hope this talk was helpful. I hope that you were able to take on board some of the concepts that I use when screening my tenants. If you want to know how to set goals in real estate, I have a quick course that you can click the link down below and see how to set goals in your real estate business. Whether you're a tenant and you feel like you've gotten screwed over in the past, or you're a landlord that just wants to cut a break to that person who you feel like they'd be a great tenant, but they've just had some bad breaks, and something in their past has led to them having less than stellar credit, a lower income, or a criminal work history. We're going to talk through each one of these things, so that way, whether you're the tenant who feels like you're being screwed over, or you're the landlord who wants to give somebody a break that you just feel like they deserve. I'm going to give you a little bit more insight into each one of those three things.